Hello and welcome back to the OTB channel. Okay, so today we're back onto Arch Linux, one of my favorite subjects. And Arch Linux seems to be surrounded with mystique, and it has the reputation for being a hard distro to install. In actual fact, that's a myth. It's not hard to install, but you do have to configure it yourself, and it is a command line installation, unless you want to go for one of the Arch-based distros that have a calamares installer and make it all very easy. However, I've been following the progress of a gentleman called Eznix, who runs a YouTube channel, which you've probably already heard of, called EZ-nix. And he's been developing an Arch install script, which makes the whole process of installing vanilla Arch incredibly simple. We're going to look at that during this video, so I'll see you after the intro. And we're back. Hello again. You'll see the intro's back, by the way. I missed it out on the last video. I had a couple of people say that they didn't like it and it was a bit old-fashioned, and I'm a bit old-fashioned myself, but I left it off, and I asked the guys in my Facebook group what they thought, and I was pleased to say that almost to a person, they said, no, we prefer it with the intro. So the intro's back and it's staying. So before we get started here, if I could just say, you'll see the pop-up coming up. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the videos. And as you know, I've also recently started a Patreon page, another pop-up. If you'd like to support the channel, you can sign up at patreon.com/OldTechBloke. Right, that out of the way. Let's talk about Arch Linux. You know that for a long time, I've been a fan of Arch Linux. I play with distros all the time, some of which I'm impressed with, others I'm not that impressed with. But my main systems have been remarkably consistent. I use Debian Stable as my work system. I don't need up-to-date packages. I don't want anything to change. And so when I'm using Linux to do work at home for my main job, I use Debian. But for everything else, I use Arch. And there isn't much that's tempted me away. I was quite impressed at Void Linux, but even that, it's still installed, but I still keep coming back to Arch. And there's a reason for that. I like the fact that it's a rolling release. I like the fact that the AUR provides so many packages. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't have the biggest selection of packages of any other distro to install. It must be close, if not the top one. And personally, I like a vanilla Arch install, because I like the fact that a plain Arch install isn't really modified in any way. You get packages as the developer intended. I enjoy the process of building up my system so it works and looks in exactly the way I want it to do. And contrary to the opinion that Arch is unstable, I haven't found it to be the case. Yes, you have to deal with constant updates. You have to update your system about once a week, and that's when I do mine. But other than that, for the last year, I've had no problems really to speak of. And prior to that, the same was true. So Arch isn't necessarily unstable. The barrier to entry seems to be the installation. And the installation isn't hard. It's just a bit, what could we call it, handomatic. It's not an install through calamares or anything like that. You do it on the command line. Now, there are Arch distros out there that are fairly customized, that are excellent. Manjaro, Endeavour, Arco, just to name a few. they're all brilliant distros. I don't have them as my main distro because I want something a bit more vanilla. I don't want somebody else's ideas imposed on my system. So that's just me. And maybe many of you feel the same way and you just like a vanilla Arch installation. Well, there are various ways of speeding this up and making it easier. And a month or so ago, I did a video on installing Arch, and I produced a text file that you could essentially copy and paste most of the commands into the terminal with. And I tried to make it easy by showing you how it could be done over SSH, and you could basically do the installation from another machine where you could literally just do the copy and paste. Well, over the last couple of months, there's a YouTube channel, Eznix, I think it's pronounced Eznix, the channel itself, run by a guy called Eznix, and he's been developing a script, mainly for his own purposes from what I can see, and he's been posting constant updates about it. And I've been following this with interest, and it's got to the stage now, and I've been playing with it at various stages, where I really think it needs showcasing. Because if you want a vanilla Arch install, this is an incredibly easy way to achieve it. And I'd go as far as to say that for me personally, when it comes to reinstalling my system, and I'm not anticipating that's going to happen anytime soon, but installing on other systems, rather than doing the Archway install, which I would normally do, I am going to use this script. I've put it through its paces, and I'm very, very impressed with it. So let's just go to the split screen and have a quick look. Right, so you should see on your screen now, I've gone straight to the Eznix YouTube channel. And there's lots of videos on this channel. Easy Archer, this is what Eznix is calling it, and you can kind of follow its progress. Now, Eznix has got hundreds of videos on this channel. I don't quite know why he's still only at 3.68 thousand subscribers. This is a great channel, and I certainly know that many of my subscribers watch Eznix as well. And what I would say here is, if you enjoy my videos, my laid-back, rambling approach, the chances are you'll like Eznix as well. He's another OldTechBloke, and he also has a tendency to do quite long videos at times, the kind of video that you can get yourself settled, get a cup of coffee, make yourself a sandwich, put your feet up, and just sit and watch it. I've been subscribed for quite some time, and really, if you like my stuff, go and subscribe to Eznix. So, that aside, you can watch his videos, and I would suggest you do so. But ultimately, he puts his scripts and the ISO up on SourceForge. Now, at the moment, I wish he used a Git, to be honest, because I find SourceForge, even with its mirrors, to be painfully slow to download. But hey-ho. What you want to do, I'll include a link to the SourceForge page in the video description, but you go to the Easy Archer folder, and you'll see there's an ISO there. Now, what he's actually put together is an xfce live desktop, which you just boot as you would boot any other live ISO, and all the magic then happens once you've booted the live system. You can run the various scripts that are available from there. Now, Eznix has also recently put his scripts on the Internet Archive. I've not used this before, so I don't know if it's any faster than SourceForge, but I'll include the link to this as well. And you can see what you think. So I downloaded the ISO. I've set it up in VirtualBox. I've done this many times over the last month, just playing with it constantly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do an EFI install, and you won't be surprised to hear that I'm going to install it with a base Mate desktop. And I'm going to do it in two ways. I'm going to do the first way where I'm literally just going to run a script and let it do its thing. It'll ask for some sort of interaction off me, but for the most part, it's automatic. Once that's done, I want to do what I'd probably call a semi-automatic install, where I make some decisions myself about partitioning that are outside of the scope of the script, but which nevertheless can be combined with the script itself to just speed the whole process up. So that said, let's get into it. Let's boot the EZ-Archer ISO, and hopefully you'll see why I think this is so great. So here we are. I've just booted the EZ-Archer ISO. It's gone full screen straight away. I've not needed to worry about guest additions or anything like this. And it's a live system, and as you can see in front of you, it's quite a nice but very plain xfce desktop. You've got a panel up here with a terminal, your file manager, which is Thunar. You've got a link to Mousepad, the text editor, and if you want to play solitaire, well, there you go, while you're installing something. Now, the system itself should probably be seen more like a delivery system, because you've got three different ways that you can install Arch using this system. So I'm not really going to review EZ-Archer, the ISO. I'm looking at it more as a means to get Arch on your system, which is, I think, what Eznix really intends from this. Having said that, the xfce system that he's put together is quite nice. It has a number of accessories installed, obviously Solitaire, Ristretto, Firefox, FileZilla and Transmission, a number of multimedia packages, including VLC and Simple Screen Recorder. There are no Office packages, but hey, that keeps the size low. And you've got your standard settings and everything else there. So it's an xfce desktop with a purpose. Now, you may just decide that you like this particular xfce desktop and you'd like to install it as is. Well, that's fine. The first way of installing it is to simply go to the System menu, and in there you will see an entry called the EZ-Archer Installer. If you launch that, you're prompted for the root password, which is actually Tor. It's root spelt the other way round, so T-O-O-R. So let me just enter that now. Oops. Apparently not. It must be asking for a pseudo password, so I'm just going to type in live here. That seems to have done it. In fact, I had to use the password live to get into the live system. And if you do that, well, you'll all recognize this. This is your calamares installer. I believe this is still quite experimental. I tried it yesterday, and what this will do, you go through the process and it will install this xfce system exactly as it is now onto your system. So I'm not going to take you through this now because this isn't really the point, but if you want to install this system particularly, you can do so with calamares. But let's just cancel out of this for the time being. The magic happens really when you go into the file manager, and you'll see there that there is a folder or a link to a folder called EZ-Archer. And that has 4 different folders inside it: docs, guides, scripts, and templates. Let me deal with the templates directory first of all. If you watch Eznix's videos, one of the things that he shows you how to do is to create your own ISO. And these are templates with most of the required settings and configurations and bits and pieces you're going to need to create a GNOME desktop or a Cinnamon desktop or a KDE desktop, etc., etc. You may also want to include calamares within that ISO so you can install it. I'm not going to talk about how to do this here. Eznix has a few videos that describe how to use these templates. Please go and watch the videos if you want to use that. What we're more concerned about is the guides section. And you'll see here that there's 3 files: Arch install BIOS, Arch install BIOS with GPT, Arch install BIOS with MBR, and Arch install UEFI. Let me just open one of these up to show you what they are. Let's just make sure line wrapping is on. Those of you who have watched my videos will know that a little while ago I did an Arch install video, and I put together an easy set of instructions, a text file on my GitLab page. And I went through that and how it works, and I made it available. And I actually suggested that the easiest way to actually use the script, if you just wanted to copy and paste, was to SSH into your Arch installation and have this type of thing open on another desktop and literally just copy and paste the commands in. Or alternatively to, follow the Arch wiki and do something similar. The great thing about having all of these instructions, text files on here, is that you don't need to SSH in. You can follow along, do an install from this live system, and just copy and paste directly into a terminal whatever you need to copy and paste. So all good. So that's really quite useful. So that's 2 ways to install so far. You can use calamares and you can install this xfce system, or you can install your own system manually, but with a lot of copying and pasting involved. So you may want to do that, and it speeds the process up. Where this really starts to shine, though, is in the scripts folder. Eznix has created 3 different scripts here. You'll see one called EZ-arch BIOS, one called EZ-arch UEFI, and one just called EZ-archer. The EZ-archer script doesn't have to be used if you've just downloaded the ISO and you're using it straight away. But what that script does is it will download the latest version of these scripts and update pacman keyring, etc., etc. So you don't have to use this one, but nevertheless, it might be good practice to use this. And once you've updated the scripts, you can then choose whether or not you're going to use the EZ-arch UEFI script or the EZ-arch BIOS script. One last folder that we haven't yet explored is the docs folder. And in here, you'll find a general README of, talks a little bit about building your own templates. And there's also some instructions about how to automatically clean the cache, how to create a reflector hook, and some general information about the scripts that you're going to use. Okay, so all good. What we're primarily concerned with, though, is the scripts folder where we can run the BIOS script, the UEFI script, or the EZ-archer script. As I say, I've booted this in UEFI mode, so I'm going to follow along as far as that's concerned. But I'm going to start by updating the pacman keyring and checking that there are no newer versions of these scripts about. So I'm opening a terminal now, and you can see that I've logged in as root. And the password for root, as I've said, is tor, root, spelt the other way round. And I'm in the scripts folder. And if I do an ls, you can see the 3 scripts are there. I'm just going to run the EZ-archer script to start off with. So it's the ./, and I hit enter. And we'll just wait for it to launch. And we get this little menu where we just get a number of options. And I'm just going to run through these options. So the first option is 1, update the Arch Linux keyring. So I hit enter and it's doing its thing. It's updating the keyring. And that should pretty much be it. I then need to decide on the script I'm going to run. And I've already said I'm going to run the UEFI script. So I'm going to select 3 now. And it's now going off to SourceForge just to check that we've got the latest version installed. So all good. It looks like we have, and we're now into the script itself. So this is a menu-driven script, which will automatically install a selection of packages, but you have a degree of choice as you're going through it. So you can choose the desktop that you want to install. You can also choose how much swap space you want to allocate, what the size of your root partition will be. But by default, those choices are quite limited. It will set up a system where your EFI partition will be mounted on /EFI, which is different to just using boot or boot /EFI, which has tended to be my preference. And it will create a swap partition, and it will create a separate home partition. So this is the fully automated way of doing this, but your choices are limited, but nevertheless it may suit you. So let's just start off, press number 1, and select our username. So, unusual to see this right at the beginning of the script, because this would be something you would normally create after, but no matter. So select 1 to create the username, and I'm just going to select OTB. Username set to OTB. Okay, great. Go to 2, make user password. Now, a word of warning here, whatever password you select will show up on the terminal. So don't have somebody looking over your shoulder, and I'm not going to use my normal password simply because it would show up as I'm typing it. So I'm just going to use OTB all the way along. And that's the password set to OTB. I now select 3 to set a root password. I'm going to select exactly the same password, OTB. All good. And then last but not least, I'm going to select 4 and select the host name, and I'm going to call it OTB Arch. And click return. Okay, so I've gone through those 4 options. I now want to return to the main menu, so I'll just select R, and we're back. The next section we have is choose device type and partition drive. So let me select 2. And you first asked, is it a SATA disk or is it an NVMe disk? Well, this is in VirtualBox, so it's a SATA disk. So I'm just going to enter 1, and we're then given another submenu. So enter device name. Okay, so let me just click on 1. So I can already see at the top here that it's telling me what the device names are. I've got a loopback device, SRO, which is the ISO, and we've got dev SDA. So we simply need to enter SDA, not dev SDA, just SDA, and it gives you the example there. So let's do that. Target device set to SDA. Okay, so next on to number 2. How big do we want our swap partition to be? You have the option here of 2, 4 or 8. I'm just going to type 2, just set a very small swap partition. Then how large do I want my root partition to be? Well, I'm going to set 3, and again we have 3 options, 20, 40 or 60. I'm just going to set 20, and the installer will use the remainder of the space to create a separate partition for home. Right, so number 4 is create partitions. I'm going to let it get on and do that. And there you can see it's done it. It's created 4 partitions, the EFI partition, the root partition, the swap partition, and 1 for home. I now need to format those partitions, so that's number 5. Saves you typing, that's all done. And last but not least, we need to mount those partitions. So we mount them by hitting option 6, and it gets on and does its thing. Right, so we're through that menu, so it's time to type R and go back to the beginning. So we've done the first 2 options. The next is to do the pack strap to install the base system. So type 3 and get on with it. Now, you've all no doubt seen this before, and it's not that interesting to watch text going along, so we'll pause this and I'll come back once that's finished. Right, so we're back. It's done the pack strap. So let's move on to the next stage. Number 4, configure the system settings. And this is pretty much automatic. It's spotted I'm in GB, by the way, in the UK. So the script's quite clever. So that's number 4, dead simple. We then move on to 5. And we have these broad categories of software packages that we can install. I would suggest that you just work your way through them. They're all pretty much the same. You work your way through from one Xorg to some general stuff, to some multimedia codecs and applications, to some networking applications such as Network Manager, a selection of fonts, and then printing support. So let me just start this off and show you what happens. And as you can see, it just does its thing. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pause this here, the video. I'm going to work my way through each of those sections because they all look exactly the same, and then we'll come back once that's all done. Right, so I've run through that menu. I've installed all the various categories, so it's time to type R and return to the main menu. And now choose option 6, our desktop. And you have an option here, LXQT, Plasma, xfce, Mate, Cinnamon, or GNOME. It will be no surprise to you that I'm choosing Mate. And again, it's going off and doing its thing. I'll come back once it's done. Right, so that's the Mate desktop installed. So we're back at the menu, type R to go all the way back. And we've only got one option left, which is install grub, number 7. And let's do that. And as you can see, it's getting on and automatically doing it. And it will install the grub executable in /EFI. Right, so that's grub installed, and it's gone back to the main menu, and my wife's just brought me a lovely cup of tea, so great. So I'm just going to type X to exit from this script, and we've done everything, so X again. Right, so that is now installed. In fact, before I close this window, let's do an LSBLK, and you should see there exactly what we have. We have 4 partitions that have been created. There's a 650 meg partition on EFI /EFI. We've got a 2 gig swap partition. We've got a 20 gig root partition, and the remainder of the disk is 9.4 gig, and that's on home. So let's just exit this. I'm going to reboot now. We will come back and I'll show you what it's installed. And once I've done that, we'll do a custom installation. So here we are. It's now booting. Fingers crossed that everything's worked well. I'm sure it has. And we should get to Light DM. OTB is selected as the user. OTB is the password. And here we go. That's Arch Mate installed. Now, I think this is great. I personally, though, would like to have a little bit more control over my partitioning. And when I initially saw Eznix developing this script, I thought it was great. He developed it for himself, obviously. And the options that the script does as far as creating a separate home partition and so on aren't necessarily what I would do. Luckily, though, there is quite a bit of flexibility in the script to do your own thing. So let's return to the EZ-Archer ISO, and I'll show you how to do a semi-automated install. Right, so we're back at the EZ-Archer ISO. And if we want to do a customized semi-automated install, especially if you're talking about partitioning, you're going to have to set up the partitions manually. And I have to say, this would be my preferred option. So you can see I'm logged in as root here on the terminal. I'm going to start by launching cfdisk and going to the drive that I want to install on, SDA, and I'm going to set up a GPT partition. I'm going to keep this as UEFI, and I'm going to create a brand new partition for the ESP, or the EFI partition if you like, of 550 megs. Okay, so we have a 550 meg partition there, and for type, I want to set that to the EFI system. Okay, all good. Next, the free space. I'm going to use it all. And I'm going to set that as a Linux file system. And that's all I want to do. I don't want a swap partition. I don't want a separate home partition here. So SDA1 is my EFI partition. SDA2 is my root partition. So all good, let's just write that out. Remember, you have to actually type yes here and quit. So if I now do an ls-blk, you should see that there are two partitions created, SDA1 and SDA2. Okay, all good. We now have to format those partitions, and we'll need to do that manually. So I'm going to do make fs, trying to remember the commands here, fat dash f32 dev sda1. So this is for the ESP partition. I need to format that as fat32. So that's all done. Great. And make fs dot ext4 dev sda2. All done. So if I run ls-blk again, okay, it doesn't actually tell us what they are here, but you can see it's exactly as before. Right, I now need to mount these partitions. The first partition that I need to mount is always going to be the root partition. So I'm going to mount dev SDA2, which is my root partition, on MNT. All good. My preference, it's /EFI is fine, but my preference is to mount the ESP on /boot /EFI. So I'm going to make directory P, and I'm going to create boot EFI. And it will help if I put MNT in front of that. There we go. All done. I'm now going to mount the ESP partition dev SDA1 on MNT boot EFI, which is the directory I've just created. Okay, so I've created my partitions, I've formatted them, and I've now mounted them. So the next stage that I need to do is I need to go into one of the scripts. And this time I'm just going to run the EZarch.uefi script directly. So /uefi and wait for it to start. And here we go. So we go through the same process. Create username. I'll use OTB again. Username set to OTB. Make user password. Okay, exactly the same, OTB. Make root password. OTB. and we'll call it OTB Arch again. So that's the first stage done, and we return to the main menu. Choose device type and partition drive. Now this is where the method gets a little bit different. So I'm going to do number 2 still. I'm still going to go into there, and I'm going to select SATA disk, and I'm also going to enter the device name. So number 1, and my device name is SDA. So target device set to SDA. I'm then going to ignore number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 because it's already been done. And I'm just going to return to the main menu. And I'm going to move straight down to 3 and install the base system. And off it goes. Whilst it's doing that, let me just open the file manager. Go to the EZ-Archer directory, go to the scripts directory, and I'm going to open up this script that I'm in the process of running. I did have to make a couple of little changes here. The main one is I went down to the section where grub is being installed, and where it sets the target directory, it was set at /EFI. I've set the target directory as /boot EFI. So you need this to match whatever your custom configuration is. So you can see it's doing its thing. You've watched this one, so I'm not going to put you through it again. We'll come back once it's finished. Right, so it's the moment of truth. That's everything installed, grub, the Mate desktop, etc., etc. So let's exit out of this and close the terminal. And let's reboot and see what happens. We're at Light DM, so let's just log in and hopefully we get our Mate desktop now. Just out of interest, before I come out of this, let's just have a look if we can bring up HTOP, which is installed by default, and the Mate desktop is currently running at 346 megs. So that is very nice, very lightweight, and gives us a base upon which we can now build. Okay, enough of that. Let's go and have a chat. So that's the EZ-Archer way of installing vanilla Arch. And I have to say, I'm struggling to find a critique. I really like it. I think it makes the whole process very easy. Sensible options are included in the scripts, but of course they're all modifiable if you want different packages installed. It's got the flexibility to allow you to do your own custom partitioning, or you can just go with it and go with whatever the defaults are and play with it to your heart's content. My only criticisms are concerning SourceForge, really, and what a nasty slow download it is from there. I've tried all sorts of mirrors, and it's never great. Please go to GitLab or GitHub, Eznix. This is exactly the sort of place where I think this should be. But if you want to install Arch and you're a little bit worried about the initial installation being handomatic, and you don't fancy just copying and pasting or using SSH, well, this gives you a method to do that straight from a live CD. And I know there will always be the detractors. I think the last time that I did my Arch installation using the text document that I provided, I got somebody saying, great, well, you've given everybody the method to install it. What are they going to do then? Are you going to support them? Well, let me say, as Linux users, you make your own decisions. Of course, I'm not going to support them because as Linux users, we support ourselves, ultimately. And if you want to play with it, you're still going to have to configure your Arch system to your liking. This is going to get you up and running with the desktop of your choice. But that's all. You're still going to have the work to do. As usual, I wouldn't generally recommend Arch to a brand new user. simply because I wouldn't put them off. But if you've used Linux for a few months, perhaps 6 months, and you feel like moving on to try Arch, this is a great way of doing it. And it will at least get you up and running very quickly. So, brilliant script. I'm going to use it myself. From what I've seen, I can't recommend it too highly. I wish I had the technical skills to have come up with something like this. I haven't, and I probably haven't got the patience either. I've seen Eznix modifying and editing this script as we've gone on over the last few months and tweaking it here and there. Huge amount of work, and thank you, mate. Really grateful for this, and I think a lot more people need to know about it. So that's it for today, guys. Don't forget to join me on Library. Come and join the Facebook group if you want to chat with like-minded people. And I would just finally like to thank the people who have joined Patreon and are currently supporting the channel. One of the first things they're going to be supporting is a faster internet connection for me, so that I can actually start doing some live streaming. As we speak, we've got guys on ladders outside doing a survey to see if we can get a wireless ADSL connection on the house, which will give me a decent upload speed. So I've got my fingers crossed at the moment. But as far as my existing patrons are concerned, I'd like to say special thanks to everybody on that list: Robert Boudreau, Corbinian Schilderman, Aristotelis, Papa Giorgio, Stormpix, Stephen Cross, Mike Long, David Bird, Entropy UK, Richard Wade, Ty Gare and Philip Espy. Thank you, guys. You're the people who are going to make this channel all it can be over the next 12 months. And if you'd like to join them, please go to the link at Patreon. Thanks very much, guys, and I'll see you at the weekend.